What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, the Solana is still in a very crucial zone that I'm under the belief will have absolutely explosive results once it breaks out of it. We're going to be taking a look at exactly how this thing is playing out and what we can expect going forward in order for us to maximize our gains in crypto. So looking at Solana, I want to recap just a general summary of what's going on in the macros, the long term, so it makes sense what we're talking about in the short term. Of course, over the last couple weeks, we've been tracking the fact that I believe we are in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave to the upside, in which we could very possibly be looking at the corrective ABC wave to the downside at this point. Of course, we can see that we had a pretty strong drive towards the downside here after this 5 wave, in which we came down. We then worked seemingly on an impulsive wave back up towards the upside before eventually continuing this corrective wave to the downside. Of course, we could label this as then the ABC wave. So the whole goal here is that if we are correct and that we are putting in this corrective ABC wave to the downside, we need to determine at what point is the C bottom in which we can start to look for us to start to continue that uptrend, maybe even back up past the B wave, currently around $100 to $140. So considering the fact that we are looking for the bottom here, we're trying to figure out, okay, at what point does it seem very likely that this is the bottom in which it's in? Well, we need to, of course, start to work our way, at least at this point, above a few key points. Now, key point is going to be, of course, the 20-day simple moving average. As you can see, Solana is one of those cryptos that very, very strongly interacts with this 20 SMA on its uptrends and gets rejected off of it really, really hard on its downtrends, as we can see here and multiple times back here, etc. And especially these 2 times before we saw the ultimate rejection to the downside, but that we saw just a few weeks ago. So that is rejection point number 1. We still need to get back above the 20 simple moving average. And the second thing is that we need, in my opinion, if it's going to happen in the short term, we need to get back into this descending wedge. That's what we've been talking about over the last 2 weeks, really. Getting back above the 20 SMA and getting back within this wedge. So what we can see going on is that as we did get this strong capitulation to the downside towards $35 to retest some of these previous levels of liquidity, we can see that we did get this strong bounce here. Okay, we did get a strong bounce back up towards the upside, in which we then came back up directly to the bottom side of this wedge. But what you can see is that we are still being rejected off of the wedge. We have not been able to re-enter back into this macro wedge here. So for that reason, today's video is to focus on if it seems likely that we're going to get this break towards the upside, or if we need to start expecting this pull towards the downside, in which we can then take on some short trades, as we have been doing a lot recently. So looking at Solana, what we're going to have to do is we're going to need to look at this in the daily and the 4-hour time frames to say, okay, are we getting bullish divergence, bearish divergence? What type of indicators are flashing in terms of bullishness or bearishness? So one thing we can see first and foremost is that we are getting a very interesting drive of divergence right now, in which as we did bounce out of this oversold territory, in which the price of, or the RSI Solana came all the way down to the 20 level, we are getting again this divergence here, in which we are seeing a general uptrend in the RSI and we're seeing a general downtrend in the price. Now, more often than not, people would consider this to be bearish divergence. But something that I've noticed with Solana, and something that happened just recently, is that the last time we got a pull and a bounce out of this zone here, the oversold territory, we actually got this same similar drive in which we bounced. We then went into this general downtrend while entering into a general uptrend on the RSI here. And what ended up happening is that led us to see a strong bounce towards the upside before, again, the initial capitulation or the eventual capitulation. So considering the fact that this same divergence in which we saw this downtrend on the price and the uptrend on the RSI tells us that momentum very possibly could be changing now that we are coming out of this really, really oversold and overextended move to the downside, which could look like us getting a stronger bounce towards the upside or just generally changing the direction of the move that we have been in recently. Now, when you pair that with the fact that we did see the Bollinger Bands cross bullish in the last, just about 3 days ago roughly, and are confirming that cross as they have started to really diverge away from each other, seeing our blue line going away from our orange line towards the upside, it shows that we are definitely in a different phase in the market right now, in But, in respect to what we saw here, this was literally straight down. So very clearly when we start going sideways, we enter into a new phase. And considering that we are not going down as fast, we can say that's bullish. And due to that bullish momentum, we are seeing a change in bullishness on many of our indicators. So this is a good sign to show that we very, very possibly could be entering into another point in the market, at least, in which we go into some type of consolidation that could be followed by a bounce, or at least the establishment of the higher low and the continuation back into this descending wedge. So right now I will say that while we are not getting back in here yet, and we are still getting rejected, I will say that it does seem pretty like a pretty strong possibility that if the market does allow, of course, because Solana is only going to move if Bitcoin does move, it does seem as if we could be in a position that even if we do continue towards some of these lower levels, that we do bounce up towards this key level up here towards, roughly $55 to $60 and enter back into this descending wedge, at which point I would be much more confident going along and accumulating, because we did then confirm a fake out to the downside of this macro trend, which is usually followed by the breakout towards the upside, almost always, okay? So what you need to be on the lookout for in terms of the macro sense, on looking at the daily charts, is do we get back above this key level of support, which is now flipped as resistance. We need to get back above this level, and that is going to be the door for us to start seeing that push back up towards $100 to $90. But until we're capable of doing so, I absolutely would not be buying right now, because this key point of rejection very possibly could send us into some type of fall that would get very, very ugly. What we have to understand and acknowledge is the fact that we are at a crucial macro level of support, being the 618 to 786 golden Fibonacci zone, in which if you draw it from the beginning of this big move from last summer all the way up until November of last year, we are retracing right back into this crucial zone. As you can see, we bounced directly off the 786 level and are trying our best to hold at this 618 level. But if we get rejected here, boom, and we start to go back down past this 35 level and lose this golden, absolutely crucial zone of support, being the 786, we do then have a very strong chance of pushing back towards this $19 level where we put in these range lows and summer lows, because usually once you lose the 786, you will resort back down to the range low, which again is right around $19 to $20. So it is absolutely crucial that we do find some support as we do see this minor downtrend continuing, and we bounce back up into this descending wedge, then eventually looking to clear this 20-day simple moving average on the Bollinger Bands. If we're capable of doing both of those, then of course I will be looking to go long, but until that happens, I absolutely will not be buying any Solana, and I do not think it is a good idea to be buying Solana until those two things do happen. Now, in terms of if I'm going to be buying or shorting, you guys know that I have been doing a lot of short trades recently. I did a short trade on Bitcoin just yesterday, and within the span of 5 hours, I made a 9.33% gain here. You can see here that I went in, I entered at around 30,000. I was expecting it to actually go down to 29.8K, so I leveraged that 3x. I was only expecting like a 2% gain, but I fell asleep at my computer and forgot to turn on my alerts, and when I woke up, we were at around $29.1 thousand, which did pick up a 9.33% gain. The trade itself was roughly $2,000, so I made about $180 off of that just in the span of 5 hours, so I was definitely happy with that, and the short trades have been paying off quite substantially recently. So for that reason, and since these short trades have been working so well, I am under the belief that if Solana does manage to come back and lose these two lows here at $44, there is a very, very strong chance that we do see the price start resorting back to the bottom side here, and I would say at least working its way back towards, the low 40s, which at that point, if we lose, say 40, let's give it $44, and we do push towards, say, $40.50. I mean, that's a negative 8% move right there, in which if you're on 2 to 3x leverage, which I trade 2 to 3x leverage, but I don't recommend for anyone who's not understanding of it, I mean, that could be 15, 20, 30% in gains there, right? So I definitely think that there are gains to be made to the downside if this key point of support at about $44.4 is lost. But of course, that does come down to us just watching and waiting to see whether we lose $44 first, or whether we break above this key level here and enter back into our wedge first. One way or another, I will accumulate here or short down here, and you guys know that is always the way I look at this thing. My goal is to not predict it and be right. My goal is to simply say this could happen and I'm going to do this, or this could happen and I'm going to do this. So with that said, that's going to be my update and my summary of exactly what I'm doing with Solana, my game plan, what I'm looking for, and why it is very important that we start to get back into this descending wedge soon before losing this key point at $35, because the loss of $35 puts us in a position to possibly visit around 19 to 20, which could very possibly be another 47 to 50% in losses. So with that said, do stay tuned for even more Solana updates as this thing does play out. And of course, I will be updating you guys on things like ADA Cardano, Matic, the overall Luna situation, and bringing you those 2 to 3 hour live streams twice a week. So do stay tuned for that. And if you want access to the trades that I make when I make them, go down to the link in the description and go check out the Patreon. But with that being said, that's going to be about it for today's video, and I will see you all next time. Peace.